What is up, fellas and lady fellas? I know that pretty much all of this country is in quarantine, but Konami still wants to get some news out, so I'm still here making news videos, so let's check out what we got today. We're going to start with Origin Gaia the Fierce Knight. This is a V-Jump promo for the OCG, so I know this is one of those things where, hey, get excited, but then you're like, oh, it's for the OCG, but it's still really cool, so it does show us that even though we're getting the Gaia support in Rise of the Duelist, I think a lot of people would agree it's a cool new archetype, or they're really trying to flesh it out as a cool new archetype, but it's definitely not there yet, at least with the stuff from just Rise of the Duelist. So it's encouraging to see that we already have stuff on the docket for the future coming up. But he looks really, really dope. This is Origin Gaia the Fierce Knight. He's level 4 Earth. Earth makes sense. He's probably a warrior, but he is level 4, which is also really nice because we've seen these archetypes that have that's based mainly around higher level monsters, and that can cause them to brick more than you'd like to and stuff. So maybe this card goes nicely. Kind of does some turbo-y type stuff. Could be a Stratos, could be something like that. I don't know, but I think it's just encouraging. We'll have to keep an eye on what he actually does, but he looks dope, and he's encouraging for the deck. And next up, for the bigger news today, we actually have the first 2 cards revealed for this fossils, for the fossil archetype in the collection pack. I was going to say structure deck, but it's not actually a structure deck. They're just getting, I guess, a handful of fossil archetype cards in the collection pack 2020 in the OCG, and then we'll probably get him imported somewhere here, at some point later. All right, but anyway, we're going to start with the fusion spell. This is Fossil Fusion. Love the name. Rolls off the tongue perfectly. It's a normal spell card. You can only use this card's second effect once per turn, but the first effect not once per turn. First effect, fusion summon 1 fossil fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing monsters from either graveyard as material. If you banished monsters from both graveyards with this effect, the monster summoned cannot be targeted by monster effects. And the second effect, if a face-up fossil fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, and this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card from your graveyard back to your hand. So this is a really solid fusion spell. I think this is really good, actually. The biggest thing here, it fuses from either player's graveyard. That's huge. It actually is. So hopefully the rest of the archetype is pretty good at loading your graveyard up in one turn so you can get a fusion off pretty quickly. But the other thing is that Verte Anaconda is a thing. This synergizes pretty well with Verte Anaconda, so maybe you put 2 monsters on board, you link them off of Verte Anaconda, and then between you and your opponent, whatever's in grave can get your fossil fusion to resolve and get you to one of your fossil boss monsters. Really, really cool. And then obviously the protection from targeting by monster effects, that's pretty good. I mean, that's where most targeting is going to be coming from, but it does open the lane for other potential outs and stuff. Just stuff like, I don't know, any back row deck, any deck that has utility in spells and traps that are removal. But for the most part, targeting is coming from monsters, but still really good. And and then the recursion, a lot of stuff is going to try and destroy. It just kind of forces your opponent to try and out stuff in awkward ways if they don't want to give you that free resource back to hand. Because if they out you by destroying you, they're not only putting another card in grave, it's just giving you another material for Fossil Fusion to pop off on the following turn, but you get it back. So I like that a lot. I think this is a really good fusion spell, especially with like Verte Anaconda and stuff. And then our big boss monster, this is the only other card we got revealed today. This is Paleozoic Fossil Knight Skull King. Crazy name. Apparently 4K Media calls him Fossil Warrior Skull King. Either way, really cool. His design is dope. This is him from the anime. He looks really clean. I love his design. He is a level 8 Earth Rock fusion effect monster. Pretty makes sense. Fossils, Earth Rock. 2800 attack, 1300 defense. Also pretty par for the course, I think. Like 2800, pretty big. Materials are any rock monster plus any level 7 or higher monster. So that second material is pretty generic, making fossil fusion pretty generically easy in a good amount of situations to resolve. He must first be special summoned with Fossil Fusion, and you can only use his third effect once per turn. First effect, he can make a second attack during each battle phase. That is not just on monsters, that is period. So if your opponent has nothing on board, you can just go boom, boom, 5,600 damage. If this card attacks at a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. So even better that you can attack twice. If your opponent's dropping stuff in defense, you're like, dink, dink, get extra damage in. And the third effect, during your opponent's turn as a quick effect, you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, discard a card, and if you do, special summon that target to your field. Now, that's actually pretty nice. I think, like, I think, obviously, like, you look at that and you're like, ooh, interesting. I guess part of it is like you resurrect. The theory behind it is he's the king, so you can resurrect fossils. So once your opponent has something engraved, you resurrect it. It takes a discard, which is like always not the best, but it doesn't discard his cost. So if you do get negated, you don't actually lose the card in hand. So that's pretty nice. But also, if this resolves, it's kind of like it's just graveyard disruption for monsters. If your opponent tries to do anything with a monster, I mean, imagine you're playing Spirals and they try to banish the trap to revive Master Plan. You can just quick effect, discard a card, and then revive the Master Plan to your field. They don't even get it. They don't get a search. They don't get anything, and they can't link it off for the double search and then keep looping it. They have to get the other one engraved, so it does give you a decent disruption there. And you just have a big body on board after that as well, which is pretty nice. So I definitely appreciate that. I think he's pretty good. I think he really is, especially combining that with like protection from monster targeting, and if like, not that he's protected from destruction, but if he is destroyed by destruction, you do get the fusion spell back, which is pretty nice. So I like him a lot. I think this is a pretty good start. Combine this with like Fossil Dyna, looking pretty clean. Anyway, my only other thoughts here are I hope there's at least 1 to 2 other fusion cards to make Fossil Fusion a little more versatile and like what you can banish from your opponent's grave, because right now if your opponent does not put anything that's level 7 or higher in their graveyard, then this guy might be pretty tough to summon depending on what the rest of the archetype is. So I'd like to see 1 or 2 more fusions, one that maybe like some that maybe do a little bit different things, because sometimes there are decks where like this graveyard disruption effect isn't actually that strong, so you'd like to see maybe some other fusions that maybe are better for different matchups or something, you know what I mean, with different disruption or different removal effects here, and then maybe go from there. But I think this is a really strong start, actually. I wasn't really sure what I was expecting from Jim Crocodile Cook's fossil stuff, but this is a good start for sure. But of course, guys, let me know your thoughts down below on these 2 new cards, and what you think so far, and how, you know, excited you are for the rest. Just let me know your thoughts. That's going to do it for me here, though. Subscribe to the channel if you have not yet, guys, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.